back to the Shell podcast live from the NMSDC Opportunity Fair and Expo booth. And our next guest that we have the pleasure to welcome is Alejandra Castilla. She is the Executive Director of the Federal Minority Business Development Agency. And welcome, Alejandra.
Deborah, thank you so much for this invitation. I think this is fabulous. The fact that you're disseminating so much great information to our MBEs.
Well, we hope that this is helpful and that folks are finding it interesting. I know I certainly am. And welcome to you.
I appreciate it.
And so you were appointed to this role about how long ago now?
A year and a half ago.
A year and a half. And you were the first Latina appointed to this role. Yeah.
The first Latina, but hopefully not the last. I think this was a fabulous opportunity. I had worked before as the National Deputy Director, so I had been in the MBDA family, so to speak. And coming to the role of National Director really gives you a wonderful bird's eye view of what's happening in the country as it relates to minority businesses. What are the trends, and how do we take them to that next level?
Well, so tell us, for those who may not be familiar, what is the MBDA?
Sure, so MBDA is one of 12 different agencies within the Department of Commerce. And commerce is very broad. Commerce is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Commerce is the Census Bureau. Commerce is ITA, International Trade Administration, and many others. And MBDA is one of those 12 agencies. So the Minority Business Development Agency just celebrated its 45th anniversary. It was created under President Nixon. And really understanding that the civil rights movement was not just about civil rights, but it was also about economic rights. And what's so true then today when we talk about the growth of minorities in the country, and how do we help minority entrepreneurs in particular to really be able to leverage and be able to grow in size and scale so that they can too create jobs and become an economic engine for the nation. So MBDA does, we have 44 centers around the country. We do access to capital, which continues to be the #1 impediment for minority businesses in terms of growth. Access to contracts, both in the private and the public sector, and access to markets. We know that 96% of the world's consumers live outside of the United States, and minority-owned firms are twice as likely to export. So we want to make sure that we not only help minority businesses do business domestically, but also answer the president's call to double exports and really be able to leverage the global marketplace.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that description. You know, it continues to build on a theme that we started in the just prior podcast, where we introduced and had a chance to talk with Marcus Miller of NMSDC. And for those of you who were tuned in, he was talking about an economic development study that NMSDC completed. And again, building on the theme that minority business development and the growth of MBEs is not just a nice to have, it's essential for the growth of our economy and the development of our economy and the contribution to jobs and wealth generation in the United States.
And we usually say that the growth of minority business is now an economic imperative for the nation. Particularly as we see the growth and diversity that's happening not just in the traditional locations and geographical locations, but all around the country.
So you talked about the MBDA development centers around the country. Tell me some of the things that these development centers do, that they work on.
Sure. So we have 44 centers, and those centers, as I said before, focus on those 3 areas: access to capital, access to contracts, and access to markets. But they work as a network. So if there's an opportunity, a business opportunity, let's say in Seattle, Washington, but there's a business that is in Mobile, Alabama, we want to make sure that we connect those opportunities to our MBEs. But more importantly, I have to say that MBDA focuses on growth. We work very closely with our federal partners, the Small Business Administration, but we want to work very focused on helping these businesses grow in size and scale, and more importantly, diversify in the industries. And that's where Shell comes in, right? In the oil and gas industry, we want to make sure that we bring minority firms that are not just ready and willing, but most importantly, that are bringing value to your supply chain. And that value has to be driven by innovation and technology. So we want to make sure that as we work with our businesses, We develop growth strategy, we bring them the capital, we bring them to where the opportunities are, and we make this partnership much more robust.
That's so important for Shell and for companies like Shell, and in particular for the energy industry. One of our challenges with growing our business with MBEs is that there are so few that are in some of the core, highly technical or highly capital intensive areas of supply. Other high barriers of entry, safety requirements, working capital requirements, manufacturing requirements. Some of these things can be really big hurdles for companies to get over. And so capacity building and the importance of partners like NMSDC and like MBDA to provide some of the focus and some of the resources and some of the connections to help those businesses grow, to help them figure out how to grow in partnership with Shell is really important.
Correct. And even though I do acknowledge, and you said it very eloquently, there are many challenges, but they're not insurmountable.
Yes.
These challenges have to be addressed through very strategic partnership and really leveraging the technical assistance. Indeed, in the oil and gas industry, it's very capital intensive. So we want to make sure that through our access to capital team, we can very much identify the capital that's needed. What type of capital? Is it traditional loans? Is it other type of alternative financing? But on the technical side, it's also being able to identify not just what you're selling, but what does the company need? Being able to really understand what is Shell's needs, whether it's in the safety area, whether it's in the technology area, obviously the drilling, whether it's vessels. Being able to help the minority business identify those needs, come to you with a value proposition that is competitive, and really be able to sustain that growth. And it's very exciting. You know, I'm a very optimistic person. So yes, there are challenges, and I don't want to suggest that it's easy. But I do want to emphasize that the resources are there, the partners are there, the willingness is there, and definitely the business opportunity is very much alive.
So can you maybe describe for me a little bit how a business, let's say I'm a business in, well, let's just pick it, Houston. I'm a business in Houston, and I offer, I'm just going to pick something. I offer environmental services with some equipment involved that I use, equipment to offer environmental services that are applicable in the energy industry. But maybe right now I don't have any energy business, or I'm looking to grow in this area or in that area. How would an entrepreneur like that contact MBDA, and what would happen once they contact it? How would MBDA work with a business?
Sure. So let's take that example. In Houston, we have a Minority Business Development Center, and I encourage everyone to go to our website, www.mbda.gov. You can look at the map, look at where our centers are, contact our centers, come in, talk to them. We'll do a diagnostic, so to speak. See where you are, what type of businesses have you done. Have you done business in the private sector? Have you done business with the federal government? Really develop a growth strategy. And as you know, Deborah, because we have such great relationships, we would then be able to contact somebody at Shell, for example, have a conversation and say, what are your forecasting needs? We have a client that we would love to bring to you, and we would have that discussion and look at and maybe it's not Shell right now. Maybe it could be one of your other suppliers, because we really believe that growth can also happen through strategic teaming arrangements. Being able to grow, at times you don't want to, you may not have the capability to go straight into Shell, but you can partner with some of your Shell suppliers and grow through that. We want businesses to be successful. And at times they may focus specifically on the big company, but there are other companies in that supply chain that they can do business and in time really grow sustainably.
And so MBDA has the centers have a network of access to finance as well.
Correct.
And so how does that look? How have you developed those relationships?
Again, not all capital is the same. You may need capital for a variety of different aspects of your business. We would also do a diagnostic in that realm and see what type of capital you need Is it for your machineries? Is it is it a cash flow problem? And really look at what type of capital and what type of lender or access to capital you would need. It could be a traditional bank. It could be something like a CDFI. It could be something, maybe even a private equity. There is such a broad spectrum of capital, and it's important to know what type of capital you need at what particular time in your growth. Because we want to make sure that when you're asking for capital, you're asking for the right amount. You're not under asking or over, but that it's really tailored to the need that you have so that the growth is sustainable. And I've said that several times. Being able to sustain growth is a full-time job. And a lot of our business owners are wearing multiple hats. They're the business development person, they're the HR, they are the accountant. And we know that. So we want to be able to be that other resource that they can bounce their challenges and their problems so that we can bring some solutions to them. So as a federal agency, again, we want to leverage our partners in the federal space, and we want to leverage our partners in the private sector space. So if I may, the reason we're here at NMSDC is because we were created 45 years ago, and we gave birth in so many ways to NMSDC. Today we find ourselves once again partnering so that NMSDC brings the private sector and we bring the federal component to it.
So how is that partnership taking place today for the conference?
Sure. So again, the President of the United States on a yearly basis declares a week in October as the National Minority Enterprise Development Week, what we call MedWeek. President Obama just did a proclamation. October 18th through the 24th is National Med Week. We understood that because NMSDC does such an amazing job in gathering MBEs, that it's only natural to be able to bring our alliances and really walk the talk about strategic partnership. This is an amazing strategic partnership. We're here because we want to make sure that not only are we talking to the private sector, but that we bring our federal partners. So we have a wonderful federal gateway here at the Expo, where more than 12 federal agencies are here. Again, the federal government spends $500 billion in goods and services, buying everything from paper goods to satellites, and we want to make sure that MBEs are in that pipeline as well. So this partnership, again, this is our first year coming back together as a collaborative entities. We want to make it work, and I think that the results so far have been very positive. People say this is logical, this is important. It also reduces the amount of conferences that MBEs have to go to and becomes kind of a one-stop shop, and that's very important.
I think it was a fantastic idea to put MedWeek and the NMSDC conference together. And so for those of you, for MBEs who may be listening across the country and didn't have the opportunity to come here, I think this is just another example of the value that can be had if you are able to invest to come to a conference like this, or to go to the regional conferences where you have opportunities to interface with, not just with the corporations like Shell, but in this case now also with federal government procurement opportunities and the kinds of opportunities that MBDA can add to the conference as well. So.
And as you know, Deborah, we always talk about diversifying your portfolio. So we want to make sure that that message is also carried. If you are an MBE, you have to have a diversified portfolio of clients. Having the private sector is critical, but having some leveraging in the public sector is also critical. And again, I think that the two are very much in line. Our MBEs are supplying some amazing goods and services that both the private and the public sector need. And we want to make sure that they have the ability to interact. So absolutely, coming to NMSDC is important, but also there's a lot of social media happening. And what you're doing today is critical. But thank you for coming up. This is great. You see, this is the beauty of NMSDC. Everybody's very excited and energized. This is wonderful.
Okay,
Good.
Don't go anywhere, though. I would like to talk with you after.
Excellent. I love this. This is exactly what happens when you're doing live TV, but more
There you go.
importantly, it's the energy that's happening here
Absolutely.
at NMSDC.
Yes.
This is beautiful.
Absolutely. So don't go anywhere without talking to Shell. So, you're talking about diversification, and that brings to mind for me, in the energy industry right now, in the oil and gas industry, we've been in a huge renaissance for a number of years, with new technology that has opened up new opportunities for exploration and really raised the amount of oil and gas that the U.S. is producing, and it's been an incredible boost to the economy. But in the last year or so, another boost to the economy has happened, in which oil and gas prices have declined and pump prices have declined. That's been great for the consumer. I happen to be one, but it also has put a lot of pressure on producers like Shell and some of our peers in the industry. So when you talk about diversification, I mean, one of the things that's happening in our industry, of course, is that our business is in a little bit of a shrinking mode now. And the procurement opportunities actually are certainly smaller than they were a year or a year and a half ago. But in the midst of that, we've still made a commitment to significantly grow our MBE business opportunities. But it also, again, raises the importance of how MBEs should be thinking about how they structure their portfolio so they're not over-dependent on one industry and have some growth or some breadth in their service capability, so that when one piece of their business may be challenged, another piece hopefully is continuing to grow and expand. And I think that's the kind of learning that MBEs can access through working with MBDA and through working with NMSDC and other organizations and resources.
But you raise a great point. Innovation is very much welcomed, but innovation also changes the paradigms, particularly in industries. And as you well pointed out, the fact that there's been new technologies in the oil and gas space has changed the economic underscoring of the industry as a whole. However, we want to make sure that MBEs are at the forefront of innovation and technology, not just in the oil and gas, but in other areas too. And I think, I had the pleasure of meeting with you not too long ago to talk about the Lab to Market initiative that MBDA has.
Yes.
And this is to make sure that minority firms are, again, at the forefront of technology, that they're leveraging research and development, that we're coupling the capital so that they can bring new ideas and new services that are much more cost effective, operationally efficient, but also opening up a new industry, right?
Yes.
There's a new industry, we call it restoration industry in the Gulf Coast, looking at environmental impact as well as commercial impact, and looking at opportunities that may exist along the Gulf Coast and in other areas.
This is one of the Lab to Market.
One of the Lab to Market
areas.
Focuses, but again, there's a lot of, we want to make sure that MBEs are innovators.
Yes.
Today's breakfast speaker was fabulous. He talked about being disruptors and innovators. And we can be that. We just want to make sure that we are exposing them to that research and development that's done through the government, and being able to commercialize it and bring new applications. So again, it's trying to look at the industry, but also trying to get some perspective long term as to what does the industry need, where is it going, and how do we bring value to the supply chain.
So the Lab to Market, I think, is a fabulous new initiative for MBDA. How would suppliers learn more about that and perhaps see if they have an opportunity to participate?
Sure. Tomorrow we have actually not tomorrow, but on Wednesday we have a plenary on Lab to Market here at NMSDC, where we have a wonderful cadre of panelists and speakers just to talk about the initiative. But I don't want it to be just an initiative. We're building the infrastructure so that this has longevity. And really being able to bring our MBEs to understand what Lab to Market is, to understand where are the research and development opportunities within the federal space. As I've mentioned before, the federal government spends somewhat about $140 billion in research and development. We have over 200 national labs, whether it's National Institute of Health, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, CDC. These are all institutions that are doing research and development, and they're doing fabulous stuff. But the question is, what happens to that research and development? Does it come to market? How quickly can we take it to market? Are there other applications that we can commercialize? And I really want MBEs to be in that space, because that's where the future is, and that's where actually the profit generating opportunities are.
That sounds like a fantastic opportunity.
It's
so
exciting.
for those of you who are here and will be here on Wednesday, we encourage you to go to that lab to market opportunity, that lab to market session, and learn more about that. In fact, I'm going to be at that one because I want to learn more about some of those kinds of opportunities as well. Are there any other developments that MBDA is working on today in terms of new ways to approach business development for MBEs?
Sure. So as I said before, we work in the space of helping businesses grow. Another point that I like to emphasize is we don't want to talk to businesses just as startups. We also want to look at them in terms of their entire lifespan. And one of the key issues is succession planning. We talk about capacity building, but we also need to talk about succession planning. And succession planning could mean many different things. As you know, Deborah, there's so many fantastic MBEs that have been successful, but they don't know who to pass the torch to. They may think that the son or daughter will take on, and maybe they will, but maybe they want to do something different. We want to make sure that we protect that equity and that opportunity for those businesses to either find ways to take it to the next level, or to make sure that the equity of that business is passed on. Because what I see a lot with MBEs is that it's very personal. The business is very personal, and I usually hear people say, well, this business is my baby. And it tends to grow and die with the founder. It's important to think about businesses much more long term, because what we also want to do is to create wealth within our communities. And that succession conversation is a difficult one, but it's a very important one. It's a conversation that needs to take place in terms of how do we grow our businesses, not just in our lifetime, but also pass it down so that it grows and continues to flourish. And one of the most important things is, let's remember, MBEs create jobs, they retain jobs, and they create wealth. And those three things are very important, particularly as we're seeing our communities grow.
Yes.
Opportunities at times are lacking. MBEs are that engine of economic opportunity.
And it's very well shown in multiple studies that MBEs hire more MBEs. And MBEs do business with other MBEs. And they create those opportunities that go out in waves through diverse communities and help build economic development in diverse communities in a way that's above and beyond what companies, major corporations like Shell do, or Shell can do. So any others that you would like to talk about specifically as part of MBDA's efforts?
Sure. You know, again, as a federal agency, we stand in a position of great privilege to be able to help minority businesses, and this is something that is really core to MBDA. Our agency works with all federal partners. We also work, as I said before, with all companies of all sizes. And it's an important agency because, again, as we said before, the changing demographics are an opportunity for our nation to really continue to be global competitors around the world. And I really believe that our diversity is going to be key to keeping the U.S. globally competitive. When you look at countries around the world, their demographics are actually not growing as much. Their population are growing. We stand in a moment of privilege where we have so much talent around our country. We really need to make sure that through entrepreneurship, we can leverage that talent and really bring innovation and bring new ideas to the marketplace. So, you know, again, I thank you for this opportunity because I think it's a wonderful platform to really talk about what's happening here, not just with the private sector, but with federal partners. And I'm delighted that you gave me this opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we would like to find out if there are any other sessions. So you talked about your plenary on Wednesday. You talked about the dozen or so federal agencies, partners that you have brought. Are there anything specifically that podcast listeners should be looking for with respect to MBDA while they're here at the conference?
Sure. So today our major activity is our federal gateway, which, as I said before, we have 12 different agencies here. Tomorrow we have our awardees. We have a number of amazing MBEs that have done tremendous things as in the manufacturing space, in the access to capital space. They've done amazing things as it relates to a global market. So we have taken the opportunity to recognize a series of amazing MBEs, and we will be recognizing them at our award ceremony tomorrow. But on Wednesday, we have a full day of panels where we have brought a lot of our federal partners, and there will be panels on the global marketplace, doing business in Africa, doing business in Latin America, doing business in Asia. There's going to be an access to capital discussion. Again, as we mentioned before, what type of capital do we need to sustain our businesses? There will be that plenary that I spoke about in terms of lab to market. And then we also have what we're calling power learning sessions. And these will be small sessions to talk about how to respond to a federal RFP, a request for proposal, how to do business in the federal space. There will be other power learning sessions, again, small gatherings so that the MBEs can really talk candidly. What are their challenges and how do they do business in the federal space? Again, doing business with the federal government may not be for the faint of heart, but getting in there is critical because the federal government buys $500 billion of goods and services. So we want to be able to, again, to bring that value proposition to NMSCC by bringing our federal partners and really helping our MBEs diversify.
You sound a little bit like Shell. Doing business with Shell is probably not for the faint of heart either. But it's very rewarding.
Absolutely.
It's very rewarding when you are able to bring your value proposition and to get connected with a company like Shell.
And as you know, Deborah, business is hard, no matter who you are. It's being an entrepreneur is perhaps the most amazing skill in terms of being open to new ideas and to really accomplishing dreams. It's not easy, but that's why MBDA exists. We are technical assistants. We bring that opportunity to help you. And I want those MBEs to leverage us. We're here to help, we're here to support, and we're here to identify opportunities for you. So again, we want entrepreneurs to be able to follow their dreams, and more importantly, to be successful and sustainable.
Successful and sustainable, and continuing to bring your goods and services to companies like Shell. You were talking about succession planning. That's such an important topic. As I think about capacity building and succession planning experience within Shell, we've probably added about $150 million worth of new spend in our supply chain within MWBEs over the last 3 years due to capacity building, focused work to help suppliers learn how to more strongly compete and grow their business with Shell. But during the same time period, about $150 million or more of spend with MWBEs has left our supply chain, not because the suppliers left the supply chain, but because the businesses ceased to be minority or women owned in the process of the succession planning. And so it's a great economic development story, but we are always sorry when we can no longer continue to count that spend. And it just it just really shows how important it is to continue to have a sustainable, developing pipeline of growing MBE businesses. And we really appreciate MBDA's partnering with NMSDC in this space to continue to grow and develop the businesses that will be our big suppliers in the future.
Absolutely. And you said something very important, the pipeline. And I'll tell you one last thing. We are also very focused at MBDA in minority youth entrepreneurship, because currently we have a very robust group of MBEs, but we need to think ahead. How are we engaging millennials who are, in some ways, their DNA is an entrepreneurial one? How are we engaging that? Because again, Secession planning is not just for the MBEs, it's also for us.